Emily Johnson stood amidst the bustling crowd on 6th Street, one of the liveliest streets in Austin, Texas. The bright neon lights from the bars and fashion boutiques reflected on the wet pavement after the afternoon rain. The fragrant aroma of coffee from the nearby Starbucks blended with the crisp autumn air, providing a comfortable yet anxious feeling. Today was the last day she could decide her future. And everything seemed to be pushing her mind into a dead end. "Are you sure?" The voice of Sarah, her best friend, rang in her ears, interrupting Emily's thoughts. "If you give up, will you regret it?" Emily stared directly into Sarah's eyes, where the light from the street lamps sparkled. She knew Sarah's support was invaluable. But this question felt like a knife stabbing straight into her heart. Regret? Perhaps. But what about living in the shadow of a bigger secret? She sighed, a heaviness like a stone in her chest. The image of her father, Robert Johnson, arose in her mind. He was a tough man, always setting high expectations for her. Every time she saw him in a black suit, with his steadfast gaze and gentle smile, she felt an invisible pressure weighing on her shoulders. But today, everything was different. In her hand was a letter, a secret that, if revealed, could change everything. "Do you want to read it again?" Sarah asked, her eyes worried. "There might be something in it that makes you change your decision." Emily shook her head. "No, I can't. It's a part of my past that I no longer want to touch." She looked out at the street, where cars rushed by, as if everyone were escaping from something. So was she, but not from something outside. Rather a deep secret within her own family. She remembered the day this secret began. It was a scorching summer afternoon when she stumbled upon an old box in the attic. Inside were old photographs, love letters, and a wedding ring. But there was one special letter that caught her attention. It was unlike any other letters. It contained threatening words, a warning that her family was not what she thought. "Emily!" Sarah called out loudly, pulling her back to reality. "Where are you?" "Sorry," Emily said, her voice small. "I was just thinking about what would happen if I decide not to go home." She couldn't help but feel afraid at the thought of facing her father, the one she felt had deceived her all her life. "You can't let fear control your life," Sarah advised. "You need to know the truth. If not, you'll never be able to move forward." Emily looked into Sarah's eyes, feeling as if everything were spinning. She not only had to face her father but also needed to confront herself. She had spent her whole life trying to please him. But now everything seemed to be collapsing. But what if the truth is too painful? What if it destroys everything I've built? "Then you'll have to face it," Sarah said, her tone firm. "You deserve to know the truth, no matter how painful it is." Emily felt a wave of anxiety rising within her. She couldn't ignore the truth, but could it save her or would it only make things worse? She was prepared for a new life, a life no longer bound by her father's expectations. But if that meant facing a secret she had tried to bury, would she have the courage to do it? "Do you remember the first time we met?" Sarah suddenly asked, startling Emily. "You were standing on stage, trembling and scared, but when you decided to step up, everything changed." Emily smiled weakly, recalling that moment. She had stood before the crowd, her heart racing, but when she started to sing, all her fears seemed to melt away. "Yes, but that was a different moment. I can't compare it to facing my father." "But you did it," Sarah emphasized. "You overcame your fear and shone. Now, you need to do the same." Emily looked around, realizing that the people around her were living their lives, oblivious to the secrets she carried within her. She felt like an outsider, standing among the crowd with nowhere to belong. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to face this." "You'll never know unless you try," Sarah encouraged. "Remember, nothing lasts forever. You can change everything if you want." Sarah's words were like a glimmer of light in the thick darkness. Emily felt a new surge of energy flowing through her body. She couldn't continue living in fear and ambiguity. She needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it was. "All right," Emily said, her voice more determined. "I will go home and face my father. I won't let this secret control my life anymore." Sarah smiled, her eyes filled with hope. "I know you can do it." As Emily turned away from 6th Street, she felt a thrill wash over her. Each step toward home was a step closer to the truth. She didn't know what awaited her there, but she knew there was no turning back. She would have to face her father, the secret, and herself. As night fell, Emily felt like a storm was approaching. She couldn't predict what would happen, but one thing was certain: her life would never be the same again. When Emily stepped into her house, the air seemed to thicken, as if everything was waiting for a storm to arrive. The familiar scent of pine wood and the aroma of baked cookies from the kitchen reminded her of childhood days, when everything was simple and joyful. But now, everything had changed. She was no longer the innocent girl, but a woman standing at the door of truth, and that truth could shatter everything. "Emily, are you home?" Robert's voice echoed from the living room, warm but also full of doubt. He was sitting on the sofa, a cup of hot tea in hand, his gaze directed out the window. The image of the father she once admired now made her feel anxious. "Yes, Dad," she replied, trying to keep her tone calm. "I want to talk to you about some things." Robert turned, his eyes scanning her face as if searching for something. "What's wrong? You seem upset." Emily swallowed, feeling as if every word was stuck in her throat. I found a letter in the attic. It talks about a secret in our family." Silence enveloped the room. Robert set his cup down, his expression suddenly serious. "You shouldn't read those things. That's a past we left behind." "But Dad, I need to know the truth," Emily insisted. "I can't live in this lie anymore." Robert stood, his gaze locking with hers, carrying both anger and worry. "You don't understand, Emily. There are things you can't change. Sometimes, the truth only brings pain. But at least I deserve to know." She felt anger rising within her. "Why are you hiding this from me? Why don't you let me know about my family?" "Because you're too young to understand," Robert shouted, his voice reverberating in the stillness. "You don't know what we have been through. That's a part of the past you shouldn't interfere with." Emily felt sadness and anger intertwining within her. She didn't want to be a weak little girl, but she also didn't want to become her father's enemy. "I'm not a child anymore, Dad. I've grown up. I have the right to know the truth about my family." "You don't understand," Robert snapped. But there was something in his tone that made Emily realize he was also struggling with pain. "The truth can destroy everything. You don't want that." "I'm not afraid of the truth," Emily said, her tone softening but still firm. "I'm afraid of living in this lie. I want to know what you did to protect our family." Robert looked at her, his gaze softening as if he was battling with himself. "Sometimes, what we do to protect others can end up hurting them. You can't understand that right now." "Then give me a chance to understand," she said, feeling as if she was standing on the brink of something significant. "Can you tell me everything?" Robert sighed, his shoulders slumping. "All right, but remember, once you know, there's no turning back." Emily nodded, a sense of excitement flooding her heart. "I'm ready." Robert led her into his study, where he often worked late at night. Inside, family photos hung on the walls, each carrying a story, a memory. But today, it was like a curtain hiding the truth. "Do you remember your grandmother?" Robert began, his voice becoming solemn. "She used to live far away. She had a past that we never talk about. Emily nodded. I know she's passed away. But what happened? She wasn't just an ordinary woman, Robert said, his gaze becoming distant. She lived through a difficult time, where decisions could change a life forever. She had to run from her past, and we had to do the same. Run from what? Emily asked, feeling as if a curtain was slowly being pulled back. She was involved in an organization that we cannot disclose. It involves things that society does not accept, Robert said, his voice lowering. We had to cut off all ties to protect the family. That's why you never knew about her. Emily felt like an electric shock running through her. Are you saying that my grandmother has a criminal past? Why didn't you tell me? Why are you hiding this? Because you can't understand, Robert emphasized. It's not as simple as you think. We had to pay the price for our choices. So, am I part of that past? She asked, feeling as if everything was becoming murky. Am I someone that you want to hide? You're not, Robert said, but his voice sounded uncertain. You are the future of this family. But you need to understand that the truth can bring pain. Emily felt like she was standing at a crossroads. On one side was the truth she craved. On the other was the pain it might bring. I can't live in this lie anymore, Dad. I need to know everything. Then get ready for what's to come, Robert said, his gaze sharpening. Because once you know, nothing can go back to the way it was. Emily felt a rising anxiety within her. She was ready to face the truth, but did she have the strength to endure what it would bring? She knew there was no turning back. The secret had been exposed, and now she must confront it. As Robert began to recount the family's past, Emily felt as if everything around her was fading away. She was not only facing the truth about her grandmother, but also confronting herself. Could she accept what her family had done to protect her, or would she continue to live in fear and doubt? That question felt like a sharp blade, piercing her heart. You can choose any way you want, Robert said, his tone gentle. But remember, the truth can bring freedom, but it can also bring pain. Emily took a deep breath, determined to move forward. She would not let fear control her life. She would find out everything, no matter what awaited her ahead. Because one thing was certain, she could no longer live in darkness. Emily stood in front of the heavy wooden door of the old house where her grandmother had lived during the mysterious years. A sense of excitement and anxiety surged within her. She had decided to return to this place after hearing stories from her father, Robert. Each step on the path leading to the house was a reminder of what she was about to face. She took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. This is the only chance, she told herself. I have to find out the truth. When the door opened, a musty and damp smell rushed into her nose. Inside, everything was the same. The pale blue walls, family photos hanging on the walls, and the old armchair her grandmother used to sit in. But today, it was no longer a safe place. It was a house filled with secrets she could not imagine. Grandma, she whispered, feeling as if her grandmother was nearby. Please let me know the truth. She stepped into the living room, where her father used to play as a child. She felt a wave of sadness wash over her, thinking of the beautiful memories that had once taken place here. But now it was just a collection of painful past fragments. Emily opened an old cabinet. Inside were dusty books, letters, and things that hadn't been touched for a long time. She searched for clues, signs of the past that her father had tried to keep hidden. Suddenly, a small wooden box fell from the shelf, startling her. She bent down to pick it up, her heart racing. When she opened the box, she found old photos, letters, and a wedding ring. But what caught her attention the most was a yellowed letter, with messy handwriting. She opened it and read, "My dear child. If you find this letter, it means I am no longer here to protect you. There are things we did to survive, and you have the right to know. Never forget that love is the most important thing. I love you." Tears began to fall down her cheeks. She felt the pain and loss of her grandmother, but at the same time, she also felt the love her grandmother had for her. "Love," she murmured. "That's what Dad said." She continued to rummage through the box and found an old photo of her grandmother with a strange man. They were smiling brightly. But her grandmother's eyes contained a deep sadness. She felt as if there was an untold story, a secret her grandmother had carried throughout her life. Who is this man, she wondered. But there was no one to answer. She decided she needed to learn more about this person, and perhaps, about everything her father had kept hidden. As she left the house, a chilling breeze swept through, making her shiver. She felt as if something was waiting for her, a truth she was not ready to face. But she knew she couldn't turn back. She needed to find out about the man in the photo, and perhaps he was the key to unlocking all the secrets. Emily returned home, filled with determination. She had decided to ask her father about the man in the photograph. But as she stepped inside, the atmosphere in the house seemed heavier. Robert was sitting on the sofa, his gaze fixed on the window, as if contemplating things that had passed. "Dad," Emily called, trying to keep her voice calm. "I need to talk to you about this man." She held up the photograph, her heart full of hope. Robert turned around, his expression suddenly cold. "Put that picture down, Emily. You shouldn't investigate your grandmother's past." "But why? You said I had the right to know." She felt anger rising within her. "Who is this man? Why are you hiding it from me?" "That's part of a past we can't change," Robert said, his tone growing tense. "You wouldn't understand. It's a painful story." "I've heard enough," Emily yelled, feeling as if everything was falling apart. "I can't live in deceit anymore. I need to know the truth." "Emily, stop," Robert snapped. But she couldn't stop. She was too tired of the secrets. "I won't stop until you tell me everything." She felt like she was standing in front of a wall, and only by breaking it could she free herself. Robert sighed, his eyes softening. "All right, but be prepared for what's coming. The truth isn't always beautiful." Emily nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. "I'm ready." Robert led Emily into the study, where he had once told her stories about the past. "Do you remember the man in the photograph?" he asked, his voice turning solemn. "That was James. A close friend of your grandmother." Emily felt her heart race. Was he the reason why Dad and Grandma had to run away? "Yes," Robert admitted, his gaze becoming distant. "James was once part of a secret organization, where people like your grandmother had to participate to protect their family. But when things became dangerous, she decided to cut off all ties." "Why didn't Dad tell me?" she asked, feeling as if everything was starting to become clearer. "Why did Dad hide it from me?" "Because you wouldn't be able to understand," Robert said, his voice filled with pain. "We had to pay the price for those decisions. You wouldn't want to live in the fear that we had to go through." "But I need to know," Emily exclaimed, feeling as if she was standing before an open door to a new world. "I can't keep living in the dark." Robert fell silent, but she could see the struggle in his eyes. Finally, he shook his head. "The truth can destroy everything. Are you sure you want to know?" Emily nodded, feeling as if she was at a major crossroads in her life. "I can't live in lies anymore." "All right," Robert said, his voice heavy. "You may regret it, but if that's what you want, then be ready for what's to come." When Robert began to recount the family's past, Emily felt as if everything around her was fading away. He spoke of the difficult days when her family lived in fear and anxiety. The decisions her grandmother made to protect the family may have saved their lives, but also took away the most precious things. "James is not just a friend," Robert said, his voice becoming somber. "He was a part of your grandmother's life. they were in love, but when things became dangerous, she had to choose between love and the safety of her family. Emily felt a jolt of electricity run through her. So she gave up her love to protect the family, she asked, feeling as if she were standing in the midst of a storm. Yes, Robert admitted. She had to endure that pain her whole life. And we have had to live in fear that one day, the past will return. But I can't live like this, Emily exclaimed, feeling anger welling up. I can't let fear control my life. You don't understand, Robert shouted. But something in his voice made Emily realize that he was also struggling with the pain. The truth can hurt everything. Are you sure you want to know it all? I can't live in lies anymore, she said, her voice firm. I need to know the truth, no matter how painful it is. Robert looked at her, his eyes containing sorrow. Okay, but be prepared for what's coming. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. She was ready to face the truth, but did she have the strength to endure what it would bring? She knew there was no turning back. The secrets had been exposed, and now she had to confront them. When Robert spoke about James's departure, Emily felt as if a storm was approaching. James was pursued by that organization, he said, his voice becoming choked. She had to make a choice, and she chose family. But that decision forced her to live in fear her entire life. Emily felt as if everything was falling apart. So she lived in pain all her life, she asked, her voice trembling. Why didn't Dad tell me? Because you wouldn't understand, Robert said, his voice turning pained. We had to pay the price for those decisions. You don't want to live in the fear that we had to go through. But I need to know, Emily exclaimed, feeling as if she was standing in front of a door opening to a new world. I can't keep living in the dark. Robert fell silent, but she could see the struggle in his eyes. Finally, he shook his head. The truth can destroy everything. Are you sure you want to know? Emily nodded, feeling as if she was standing before a significant crossroads in her life. I can't live in lies anymore. All right, Robert said, his voice becoming heavy. You may regret it, but if that's what you want, then be prepared for what's to come. Emily felt like she was standing on the edge of a monumental decision. She was ready to face the truth, but did she have enough strength to endure what it would bring? She knew there was no turning back. The secrets had been uncovered, and now she had to confront it. You can choose any way you want, Robert said, his voice softening. But remember, the truth can bring freedom, but it can also bring suffering. Emily took a deep breath, determined to move forward. She would not let fear control her life. She would uncover everything, no matter what awaited her ahead. Because one thing was certain, she could not live in the shadows any longer. As Robert began to recount the family's past, Emily felt as if everything around her was dissolving. She was not only facing the truth about her grandmother, but also confronting herself. Could she accept what her family had done to protect her? Or would she continue to live in fear and doubt? That question was like a sharp blade, piercing her heart. Finally, when the story ended, Emily felt as though she had stepped into a new world. She was no longer the fragile girl, but a strong woman, ready to face every challenge. She knew that the truth could be painful, but it could also bring freedom. Thank you, Dad, she said, her heart filled with gratitude. I will not let fear control my life any longer. Robert looked at her, his eyes filled with pride. You are the future of this family. Live with the truth, no matter how painful it may be. Emily nodded, feeling as if she had found strength within herself. She would not let the past control her life. She would live with the truth. And that was the most valuable thing she could do. As she stepped out of the house, the sunlight shone on her face, bringing a feeling of warmth. She knew she was ready for what was to come. And nothing could stop her now. She would live with the truth, and that was the most precious thing she could do. Emily stood by the lakeside, where the sunlight reflected sparkling rays on the water's surface. She felt as if she had just gone through a long journey, full of hardships and discoveries. The secrets about family, the pain, and the loss had helped her grow, but they also gave her the strength to forgive and love. She remembered the stories her father had told, the difficult decisions her grandmother had to make. The heavy feeling in her heart has now been replaced by lightness. She no longer felt the burden of the past, but instead, an understanding and compassion for those who had lived and suffered to protect her. "Grandma," she whispered, looking towards the lake. "I understand now. You did everything out of love." Her words echoed in the stillness, like a prayer, a promise that she would not let the past control her life. Emily turned back, her gaze searching for her father's figure. Robert was standing not far away, his eyes directed towards her, as if he sensed the change within her. She stepped closer, filled with determination. "Dad," she called, her voice stronger than ever. "I've thought a lot about what you said. I understand that truth not only brings pain but also an opportunity for us to grow." Robert looked at her, his eyes full of hope. "Are you ready to face what lies ahead?" "I'm ready," Emily affirmed. "I'm no longer afraid. I want to learn about the past, but I also want to live for the present. I want to forgive for what has happened and to live with love." Robert nodded, his eyes shining with pride. "That's what I have always hoped for you. Forgiveness is not forgetting, but accepting and allowing it to no longer affect your life." Emily felt a gentle breeze blow through, carrying away the memories and pains of the past. She learned that love can overcome any barrier, and forgiveness is the key to open the door to freedom. "I want to go back to where Grandma lived," she said, filled with determination. "I want to know more about her and what she went through." Robert nodded, his gaze warm. "We can go back together. That will be a way to honor her and what she did for us." As they left the lakeside together, Emily felt as if she was stepping into a new chapter of her life. She was no longer the frail little girl, but a strong woman, ready to face any challenge. She learned that what happened in the past cannot be changed, but the way she chose to live with it could bring strength and maturity. When they returned to their grandmother's old house, Emily felt a familiar sensation flooding her heart. The house bore memories, but now, it also carried a new hope. She stepped inside, her heart full of anticipation. "Grandma," she whispered. "I am back." Each step she took was a way to honor her grandmother, to feel the love her grandmother had for the family. Robert stood beside her, his gaze reflecting reverence. "This is where Grandma lived, where she loved and protected us." Emily walked to the living room, where Grandma often sat. She sensed the warmth of love in every little corner of the house. "I want to learn about her, about what she went through," she said softly. "We can find her keepsakes," Robert said, "letters, photographs that may help you understand her better." As they sifted through the old cabinets together, Emily found a small box containing old photos and letters. She felt as though she was discovering an entire world. Each photo contained a story. Each letter held a message. "Grandma lived a life full of challenges," she said, emotions swelling. "But she also loved a lot." Robert nodded, his gaze becoming warm. "That is the most important thing. Love and forgiveness are what we need to move forward." As they left the house, Emily felt as if she had found a part of herself. She had learned that the past cannot be changed, but the way she chose to live with it could bring strength and maturity. "I feel like I've found my inner strength," she said, her gaze turning towards the horizon. "I will not let the past control my life anymore." Robert smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "You have grown so much. Live with love and forgiveness. And you will always find light even in the darkest moments." Emily nodded, feeling ready for what was ahead. She was no longer afraid. She had learned that love is not just an emotion, but a decision. She would live with love, forgive what had happened, and look to the future with hope. as the afternoon sun shone through the trees. Emily felt as though she was stepping into a new chapter of her life. She was ready to write her own story, a story full of love, forgiveness, and growth. Emily stood by the edge of the lake, where everything began. She looked at the surface of the water, her heart full of hope. "I will live with love, Dad," she said, her voice gentle yet firm. "I will not let the past control my life anymore." She knew that life would always have its challenges, but now she was ready to face them. She would live with love, forgiveness, and continue to grow. As she turned away, the evening sun lit the path ahead. Emily felt as if she was stepping into a new journey, a journey full of promise and hope. She would never forget the past, but she would also not allow it to shape her future. "I will always love and forgive," she whispered, as a promise to herself. "And I will live a meaningful life." And so, with each step, Emily moved forward, her heart filled with determination and hope. She knew that life would not always be easy, but with love and forgiveness, she could overcome any challenge. Her story was not just about the past, but also about the future, a future she would write with her own hands.